welcome. It's another edition of Thursday Night Sports Talk on the AirNetwork.net. I'm Greg Banks. Well, the National League Championship Series and American League Champion Series is now set. Who goes to the World Series? It's anybody's guess. Meanwhile, the Steelers get set to face the Browns again. Penn State travels to the Big House to take on Michigan on Saturday. And Penguins are lacing them up, which is probably good news to Dave Shannon. It's all coming up on Thursday Night Sports Talk with Dave Shannon, Chad States. Jimmy Ty will join us a little bit later, and I am Greg Banks. And I know you got to be excited, Dave, so we'll talk a little bit about the Penguins later on in this edition of Thursday Night Sports Talk. I guess you probably have the tube already turned on, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. The Pens are just being introduced and taking the ices. Ole Matta makes his way to the Consol Energy Ice. And, of course, for me, like some folks, I'm enjoying a little Andy Williams here. It's the most wonderful time of the year. You got your baseball playoffs, hockey getting underway.
Indeed. Should be a lot of fun.
It's amazing the amount of sports that go on in the fall.
Oh, I'm loving it.
Gotta love it.
I'm loving it. Hey, Chad States in Huntingdon, how you doing these days?
Doing good. Just loving the fall like Dave is.
Oh, yeah.
I agree with him. It's championship baseball time. You got the NFL going on, NHL starting.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that league we call the NBA, it's getting fired up too. But
I don't pay much attention to that until like probably the playoffs near the end of that season. It just seems to drag on. But speaking of baseball, talk a little bit about the National League Championship Series and the ALCS getting underway this weekend. I think the National League Series gets underway tomorrow night. What happened to your Nats, by the way, Chad? I just
Well,
curious.
you know what? Here's what I failed to calculate with the Nationals. It's an even year.
Oh, okay.
I mean, 2010, who won the World Series?
Yeah,
The
well, that's a
Giants.
good enough excuse.
2012, who won the World Series? Or the Giants.
Okay.
It's 2014. Who's in the NLCS?
Right.
The Giants. I failed to calculate that, and I don't know how I didn't see it coming.
Well, what happened in
Nationals
that?
didn't hit.
Yeah, what happened in that series? Because you guys had all the big guns getting ready to throw, and I guess it did. It came down to like they got outgunned, man. I think is
Well,
what
they
happened.
did. I mean, every game was close. Strasburg pitched a really good, game one, but it got into the bullpen, and the Giants, took away a one-run win.
Mm-hmm.
Same way with the second game. That second game ends up being a marathon game, and I actually think Matt Williams blew it. He took Jordan Zimmerman out with one out in the ninth to be able to bring his closer in, and his closer ended up blowing the game. I think if you keep Zimmerman in, they get that out, the complexity of the series has changed. But it doesn't happen. It goes on to be an 18-inning ball game, so you still have other chances to win, and they don't get that, and quickly now you're down 0-2, and you're headed on the road. Well, that's a tough hole to dig out in a 5-game series. So, it's a matter of, a team has to grow up, and I thought they might have from 2012 when they got that really tough loss against the Cardinals in the NLDS, but they didn't. They didn't put it together, and hats off to the Giants, guys. I mean, let's face it, Bruce Bochy's probably one of the best managers that we've seen in our era, along with Tony La Russa and Joe Torre, Bobby Cox and those guys. This guy knows how to play. This guy knows how to coach the game, and he knows how to get the most out of his players. So, hey, Giants, I mean, it could be their year again.
Hey, Dave, what do you think of this series? Go ahead.
I was going to say, how about the fact that he was the last guy that did anything significant with San Diego, too?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely right.
It's easy to look at him and relate to what he's doing here with the Giants, but Bruce Bochy was the last guy that did anything significant with the Padres. So, it's time. You're absolutely right to put him in that category with the La Russas and the big-time managers and Hall of Fame type stuff, no doubt. And That series surprised me. Now, as a Nats fan, I need to ask you this, Chad. Matt was under the microscope. Matt Williams, the manager of the Nats, was speaking of the manager side of it. He was under the microscope, took a beating on television, took a beating in the news conferences afterward, started to turn into Bill Belichick because I think he was tired of being beaten on as much as he was. Is there anything you can say? Is he still learning what to do as far as the Nats go?
Has to be. You don't pull a starter like he pulled with Zimmerman. I mean, you just don't throw that to your bullpen. To Drew Storen, who has been good up to this point, but only through maybe a third of the year when he took over for Rafael Soriano, who started blowing it. Storen did not do good in the playoffs the last time they made it, and that's kind of why he lost his closer's role a couple years ago. So, yeah, I think that Matt Williams is growing with his team as well. They thrive on talent the whole year, but when you get to a short series and a concentrated, 5-game set against a very good team, because, let's face it, they can win 89, 90 ball games a year, but you're going to play your duds in between. Well, in the playoffs, you're not playing a dud. You're playing a solid team for 5 straight games. So,
yeah.
Is Matt Williams to blame on this? Sure, I think he's as accountable as anybody on the team.
Hey, I'll tell you one thing about the Nats I think that you really have to be just absolutely thrilled about. I mean, it's Bryce Harper is now officially he's the Sidney Crosby of the Washington Nationals. For those of you who like hockey, you got to look at him that way. Maybe you want to look at him as the Andrew McCutchen, whatever. I think Bryce Harper is solidly on his way to a Hall of Fame career, assuming he doesn't get injury prone or have any other of those type problems. But I thought he had a really good series, just absolutely pummeled the ball there in San Francisco the other day into the Bay. So I that to me was really heartening to see, is that Harper is a likable guy too. He, to a degree, he reminds you of Pete Rose. He's a Charlie Hustle kind of guy, no matter whether he's on the bases, in the field, whatever.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Dave, because another guy that I'm impressed with is Matt Adams. We were talking off air about Phillipsburg,
yeah.
And Matt Hales from Phillipsburg plays for the Cardinals. First baseman, kind of quiet, and sort of like just gets his job done. Well, he hit one out of the park the other night that was just unbelievable to watch a local kid do that. And I'm sure it was a historic feat, because I believe it was the first time a left-hander hit a home run off of somebody during the series, or was it against that pitcher in particular?
Here it is. And this is the thing that amazed me, because I looked at my son right before that pitch, and I said, I like Matt a lot. I said, we want him to do well because he's a local guy. I said, but nobody hits Kershaw's curveball
Right.
for a home run, especially if they're a left-hander. Next pitch, bang, he's in and out. I don't think I've seen anybody do that in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, his curveball to a left-hander is devastating, and Adams just pummeled it out. You can't be happier for a guy. This guy has hit at every single level he's been at. He was Division II Player of the Year when he was at Slippery Rock. So, he kind of slid under the radar screen for certain teams out there. The Cardinals have a knack of being able to find these players year in and year out. This is the 4th year in a row this team's in a National League Championship Series. That's not just by luck. These guys get it. They really, really do. It's the best organization maybe in all of Major League Baseball right now.
And how do you guys see this thing?
That being said,
go ahead, Dave.
Let me get one thing in here. I am now officially annoyed at everyone on television and in the media. They are a great organization. Stop beating me over the head with it. I'm sick of hearing about it. I am sick of hearing about how wonderful the Cardinals are.
Yeah.
As Chad just pointed out, we can see that by where they are every year.
Right.
And here's another thing, as a person that's now, I'm almost in the, when I was growing up, the Pirates-Phillies was always such a big rivalry, and you just flat out hated the Phillies. Okay. Well, now I just flat out hate the Cardinals, but here's the bad news for me as a Cardinal hater. Credit to this organization, they know they're getting a little long in the tooth, and you know what? All you have to do is look at what happened in State College this year to know that they have the guys that are ready to come up through the farm system.
Right.
And you know what? I don't think they miss a beat. I don't think they miss a beat for, 10 years into the future.
Well,
it is amazing to see.
Yeah, you got to be honest. They are a very consistent organization. Even going back to the LaRusso days. I mean, we can go back further whenever Kurt Flood, Lou Brock. I mean, I always kind of love those guys. Yeah, I always kind of love the Cardinals. How do you see this matchup, by the way, the Giants and the Cardinals for this series, by the way, Chad?
I'm going to take the Cardinals. I just think that this team just has that certain something that they get it done. And obviously I'm going to pick against the Giants because they beat my Nationals, so I don't want them to win. But I'm going to take St. Louis. I'm going to root for Matt Adams, and I'm going to think that they're going to get back into the World Series this year.
And Dave, as much as you hate these guys, the Cardinals, how do you see that matchup? I mean, realistically playing out here in the next few days?
Well, this is a 7-game series, so
Right.
a number of the dynamics change now, and you get a chance to see the starters rolling back around again. Madison Bumgarner, what a secret weapon for the San Francisco Giants.
Oh,
He
yeah.
unfortunately got unleashed against the Pirates, but I'm kind of buying into this. This team being able to do, because they're just coming out of a close series, so they're not going to be in any kind of foreign territory when they take on the Cardinals, because these games are going to be, your 3-2s, your 2-1s, your, maybe a few scattered. It seemed like there were so many extra inning contests here in the division series, and I look for that to continue. And I look for the Giants to stay on a roll. I think maybe this even year thing is going to play out, as crazy as that sounds, but it looks like that may happen.
Well, the Giants-Cardinal series getting underway tomorrow, by the way. Meanwhile, the ALCS gets underway on Saturday. How do you see that matchup? And obviously, you got to be surprised, both of you guys, with the Royals, because what a team out of nowhere.
Chad, not so much. Chad was on the Royals bandwagon early.
Yes, he was. What do you think, Chad? Those guys didn't look bad, did they? Did real well.
When you can pitch well and you can play great defense, and you have tremendous team speed, you're never out of any ball game. And that's the thing. If you watch that series against the Angels are a home run hitting team. They're built kind of like the Yankees used to be whenever they were making their runs.
Right.
We're just going to clobber pitches, and we're going to beat you into the ground through home runs and long ball and all this other stuff. They took away 2 or 3 home runs in that series because of their outfield play.
Right.
They took away maybe 3 or 4, maybe even 5 hits away because of their outfield play. They had Billy Butler stealing bases in that series. That was almost an embarrassment to the Angels when he stole a base. But there's just, it's like, Dave was saying about the Giants. Some teams just have a certain vibe about them. They just got a certain feel. And as much as I'm not a big Ned Yost fan as a manager, because I do think he makes some pretty silly mistakes, his team is loaded with speed and tremendous defense, and that can neutralize an offense, guys. And like I said, there's something there, and that's why I picked them over the Angels.
Right.
The Royals are a different ball club, though.
And I love the Royals primarily for the fact they do play small ball, and they do get at it. They have a lot of speed. But conversely, you had mentioned something to me that I was just thinking about. The Angels with that heavy payroll, and also the Dodgers with their heavy payroll. There's just no comparison when you see a team like the Royals just come out of nowhere. Of course, you might have been watching them throughout most of the season, but I hadn't seen them on national TV. How do you think that series is going to sort of like roll out here with the Orioles now and the Royals? And what do you think, Dave, coming up in this series?
In this case, I went with the Giants there. In this case, I'm going to, as much as I love the way the Royals are playing, you got to love the way it's good to see a dominant team. And I didn't look at the Cardinals as a dominant team. It just blows me away because Chad and you and I have had this discussion since we've been doing Thursday night sports talk.
Right.
That good pitching stops good hitting. And you have to look at the Dodgers and say, oh, man, they're a shoo-in. It's like a dream. It's almost like the old days of the Braves.
Yep.
When you had Smoltz and Maddox and, just an unstoppable starting 3 that they had. And, and you're looking at, everybody there at the Dodgers, and I'm blown away. I did not expect that to happen, but it did.
Well, what I'm loving in this upcoming series is you got 2 great baseball men. Well, let's put it this way. You have one. You have Buck Showalter. This guy, he goes back, many moons. And so it's got to be one of those strategy games that is going to be played out in the American League Championship Series. Wouldn't you think, Chad?
Yeah, I do. And I think that, when we talk about great pitching, the starters can only go maybe 7 innings max.
Right.
Then you're going to get into a bullpen. And I think that was the Angels' downfall, was they didn't have a bullpen to match the big 3 that the Royals can throw out. Well, guess what? The Orioles have a bullpen to be able to match that up. So I think that neutralizes what Kansas City had as an advantage pitching-wise over the Angels. And I really feel I think this is Baltimore's year.
Yeah.
You know, now that we're down to the Final Four, there's something there, and I think Buck Showalter gets it done and well-deserved. The guy's a great manager. He has been for years, and he deserves something, and I think this is his.
And I don't think you're going to see in any of these matchups these high-scoring ball games. I think they're all going to end up being tight, relatively tight. And that's the way it's going to probably pan out till we get into the World Series, I imagine.
And by the way, you were talking about Angels pitching there, and what went on. And here's the thing, for Pirates fans, here's your takeaway from the playoff series. You know, there were a lot of people that were bummed out when Grilly went, and Jason's done. He's just flat out done. Mm-hmm. He cannot hit his spots anymore. He gets the ball up. And this was something that worried me about him after, last season, because toward the end of the season, and anybody in any age can succeed in Major League Baseball. But it was taking its toll on him, and he just lost that ability to keep the ball down. And I'll tell you what, every inning he came in, it was guaranteed fly balls to the warning track or right at the base of the wall. And he did the same thing when he threw for the Angels here in the postseason. And, so if you thought that was a mistake, think again. Mm-hmm. The Pirates made a good move there.
Speaking of Pirates, speaking of the Buccos, it's good to see that the skipper is back on his legs again, man. He was killing me watching him walk around the dugout with that bad hip, Clint Hurdle.
Yeah.
We love you, man. Just hang in there. But he had his surgery last week, and the Pirates will move on. They'll make some changes. We'll talk more about some of that stuff later on in a later edition. It's Thursday Night Sports Talk on the airnetwork.net. Dave Shannon in Altoona, Chad States in Huntingdon. I'm Greg Banks in the studio. Jimmy Ty, by the way, the fantasy football guy, will be joining us in the next segment when we talk about the Huntingdon Bearcats. It's homecoming tomorrow night, and the Pittsburgh Steelers get set to take on the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. That and more coming up next on Thursday Night Sports Talk.
Confessions of a Potentially Perfect Parent, brought to you by AdoptUsKids.org.
I might look like an adult, like a person who could possibly be a parent, but I have no idea how to talk like one. And everyone knows that if you want to be a parent, you have to sound good when you say things like, "Don't make me turn this car around," or "Because I said so," or "Don't make me come back there." I don't even really know what those things mean, but I know that I actually believed my parents when they said them to me. How did they manage to sound so convincing? Here we go. "Don't make me come back there." Ugh, no, that's not tough enough at all. Kids can sense weakness. "Don't make me come back there." Ooh, yeah, that's better. In fact, that kind of sounded like my dad. Weird.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to listen to you practice your dad voice. Call 1-888-200-4005 or visit AdoptUsKids.org for more information.
I've had trouble with Angel trying to finish high school. He's always struggled through even elementary. It would be frustrating because sometimes I would talk to him and he wouldn't even turn around and look at me. I would ask him, "So you're going to school today, right?" He would say, "Yeah." And then later during the day, I would get a phone call saying he wasn't in class. He dropped off for a whole month. There's a time that I just gave up. I just decided, you know what, I don't know what to do with you. I mean, I pretty much have done everything to try to get you back to school. You know, you feel that maybe you're not a good parent, or maybe you don't know how to fix the problem. I really didn't have many people to look to but myself. Now I think that it's gotten a lot better. Now I at least have hope that he'll finish high school. I can't give up. He's still my son, I can't give up.
Give your teen the boost they need to graduate. Call 1-877-4A-KID or join us at boostup.org for tips and advice. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
It's Thursday Night Sports Talk. Greg Banks in the studio. Dave Shannon joining us from Altoona. Chad States in Huntingdon. And Jimmy Ty live from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. It's Thursday Night Sports Talk. Welcome to it. Jimmy, how you doing?
Doing great, guys. How's everybody doing out there?
Doing all right. Doing okay. Jimmy's in the house. Jimmy, hang on for a second. Want to talk a little bit high school football with Chad just for a moment about the Bearcats. Kind of a rough beginning of the season, but it seems like they're coming around here after they defeat Ligonier Valley last week, Chad. 20-17 in overtime. How was that game?
It was a great game, a big win for the Bearcats. It puts them into 5th place in the District 6 AA rankings. They had a tough go to begin with, but if you look at the 3 teams that they lost to, they are now a combined 16-2 overall.
Ooh, yeah.
So it wasn't like they lost to chopped meat there, at that stage of the ball game. But now they're coming into the winnable part of their schedule. Last week was a huge win over the Ligonier Valley Rams. Just absolutely a big morale booster, a back-and-forth type of game where Huntington's defense had to come up with big plays, and they finally did. And when they needed it the most, their leader, their junior running back, Mr. Everything, John Wagner, scored a 15-yard touchdown in overtime to give the Bearcats a 20-17 victory over Ligonier Valley.
And John, again, was your player of the week, I guess, on your Bearcat Facebook page,
John
right?
was my player of the week. He had 90 yards rushing in the second half, led the team in tackles again, had an interception at the end of the first half. The kid he's literally just all over the field.
And he's also, I understand, as we had mentioned before, a state champion wrestler as well.
He's not a state champion, but he is a state qualifier wrestler. And he is absolutely one of the most outstanding baseball players that we have down here. So he's just a tremendous all-around athlete. And honestly, he's one of those kids you root for, because as soon as you see him at the end of a football game, he'll come over and he'll shake your hand and say, "Hey, Mr. States, how was that?"
And he's giving us
that's
all.
That's the type of kid that he is.
Yeah, and he gives us all every game. Tomorrow night, by the way, homecoming at War Vets Field, Bald Eagle area coming into town. What do you know about them and what's going on?
Well, Bald Eagle area is 1-5. Their only victory is coming over Phillipsburg Osceola, who hasn't won a ball game all year long. So Bald Eagle area is not having a very good year. However, they are very big on the lines, and that's going to present Huntington with some challenges, because our lines are not very big at all. Right. So Coach Mike Hootie is going to have to find different ways to be able to neutralize that size. Now, do I think he can do it? Absolutely. Last week, he decided to go to more of a run-and-shoot type offense with his quarterback in a shotgun formation. I think you'll see more of that this week. He'll stretch out his running backs and flare them out to be able to get those guys passes in spaces and be able to let them do what they do. So I'm actually looking for Huntington to win fairly comfortably this weekend. I'm going to predict a 27-10 victory for the Bearcats on homecoming.
All right, best of luck to the Bearcats as they look for, I believe that's win number 4 this season, right? Tomorrow night?
Would be when they'd be 4-3.
All right, homecoming night.
Quick question for you. Chad, how much and I've not been in the Huntingdon area for a while, but this always plays into what goes on as far as the future, I think, of athletics in any town. How many people in the that are living in the Huntingdon area are now what you would call commuters to work in State College, as the road system seem to get better and it's easier to, commute to jobs. And a lot of people love to get away from that Center County tax base. It's a great place to work, but boy, I'll tell you what, you die as far as taxes.
Expensive, yeah.
Yeah, it's expensive to live there. So is that playing a role? Are you seeing a lot of folks that maybe become, maybe Huntington's a bedroom community, so to speak, for State College?
Not so much. The thing that you have to realize that is between Huntington and State College is a gigantic mountain.
Oh, yeah.
Greg, you're here. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Pine
and
Grove
that's
Mills.
Not the easiest thing to go back and forth across, specifically in the wintertime.
Right.
So your only other route is to go up through what we call Spruce Creek, which is a windy, twisty, turny type of road to go up through there. So while it's more attractive to live on this side, I think what you're seeing is just people that are native to Huntington maybe going over to State College and getting jobs, but you're not seeing anybody from that area move over here to live and commute over.
Yeah, if you remember, Dave, last week there was a terrible accident at the base of that mountain, Pine Grove Mills. It seems like every year a truck goes through somebody's house or garage or something at the base of that hill, and as Chad alluded to, that is a terrible mountain to have to travel. For the most part, you're finding, I think the institutions are the largest employers, and second to them perhaps would be Juniata College in that area, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the fairly big one.
Yeah, in the hospital. So those are the big three in Huntingdon. The institutions, you also have Juniata College and the hospital. But anyhow, best of luck to the Bearcats tomorrow night, Chad, as they go for win number 4 against Bald Eagle area. It's homecoming. I know the class of 72 will be there. I'll be in town on actually Saturday to do a little party with those guys at the Elks Club. So, hey, if you get a chance, man, stop out, Chad. See me. We'll be out there starting around.
Hey, you sign me in. I'll be out later in the evening. You got it.
Okay, I'll get you in there anytime between 3 and 7 because, I don't stay out late as it is. Hey, I like to be in bed by 10. Hey, Jimmy, tell him the story. You called me the other night, right? It was like around 9 o'clock or something, and I'm like, oh, man, Jimmy, why are you calling me? Now I'm getting ready to go to bed. Well, I didn't mean
9:30.
Yeah, but I didn't.
9:30.
Yeah, okay, it's 9:30. But I wasn't actually going to bed. I was going to get to the bed so I could watch some of the baseball game and then fall asleep. So to which Jimmy said, "Geez, Greg, you're not that old." I know I'm not, but I got to get settled in. But speaking of sports and stuff like that, Jimmy's joining us each week to talk a little bit about football. More importantly, fantasy football. Jimmy, who are some of the starters and who are some of the sleepers that you got this week?
Well, one of the sleepers I would have is Brandon Oliver of San Diego. He is the version of Darren Sproles when Darren Sproles played in San Diego, has his number, but he has more power than Darren Sproles. And with Ryan Matthews not playing, Danny Woodhead out for the season, the only other guy they have in their backfield is Donald Brown. So I would go with Brandon Oliver of San Diego. He is available in most leagues, most fantasy football leagues.
Yeah.
Another guy I would look at is the guy the Steelers played last week, Blake Bortles of Jacksonville. He had a solid game.
Yeah.
He played against a weak Steeler defense.
Okay.
But still, just pick him up in the kicking game. Because everybody needs a kicker in their league.
Right.
Matt Prater, he was cut by the Denver Broncos. He had a 4-game suspension, cut by the Broncos.
Right.
Picked up by the Lions. So I would go with Matt Prater of the Detroit Lions if you need a solid kicker.
Hey, speaking of the Broncos, I don't know if you heard, but LaRod went out to Denver to try out for the Broncos today. We haven't heard how he's doing yet, but you knew
he didn't make the team.
He didn't make the team? Okay, I appreciate that update, but that's something I wanted to throw out there. Let me ask you this. So Bortles' stock went up just because of that Steeler game, and we'll get more into that in just a moment. But tonight, Thursday Night Football, they got the Colts taking on the Texans. You got anybody on your squad that we should be watching for as a starter, obviously, or sleeper out of those two teams?
The only guy I have on them two teams is Andre Johnson. He has not had a touchdown yet, but I'm hoping he gets one pretty soon. Because I need some points. Come on, Andre, you got to score for me.
Well, I don't know if you're not picking the right guys or not. Because it sounds to me like you should have picked at least Andrew Luck for your team. I mean, come on, man.
He was a keeper. It was a keeper league.
Yeah, okay.
So, but I have Andre Johnson playing this week in my league. But the look at the fantasy football league that I'm in right now.
Right.
The team I'm playing against has like 3 players. They have Arian Foster, Andrew Luck, and T.Y. Hilton.
Oh, okay. So that deck is stacked.
I'm behind the 8 ball going into Sunday's matchups.
Well, let's talk a little, guys, about the Colts and Texans game tonight, and then I want to get in something else about Thursday Night Football in itself. But how do you guys call that, Chad, tonight? Colts take on the Texans. That game after 8 o'clock tonight. How do you see that coming out or working out?
I think I look for the Colts to actually have a little bit of an easy sail. Mm-hmm. I think Bill O'Brien, for as an experienced a coach as he is still learning to be the head coach of that team. Mm-hmm. And believe me, I have no doubts. The man is outstanding character. Yeah. And I think, they may they're going to rebound, but I'll tell you what, that loss to Dallas, you could just see it on his face and the face of a lot of the guys, on the field.
Yeah, I saw.
That was a devastating loss there.
It was, and I do remember him coming onto the field because, really, Dallas should have lost that game. There was just no doubt about that. Yeah. It was their game to lose. Chad, what do you think about tonight's game? Houston taking on the Texans. How do you see that turning out?
I'm going to take the Colts. Andrew Luck is just so good and so fun to watch, and he's one of those guys that just gets it, and he can beat you not only with his legs and his arm, but he can also beat you with his mind. The guy's he's sharp as a tack. So, I'm thinking the Colts win this one pretty easily this evening.
You ever notice that Luck is not afraid to run the ball in the red zone? I mean, he's not afraid to take it in either, man. You know what I mean? So, he does a very good job. Jimmy, how do you see the game turning out tonight between the Colts and the Houston Texans?
I see Texans being very upset about what happened last week against the Cowboys, but Andrew Luck is just going to dominate them. Like Chad said, he can beat you with his mind and with his legs and his arms. So I see the Colts winning this game easily.
Very intelligent quarterback for the Colts.
Very intelligent.
Yeah.
Well, he went to Stanford, so what do you expect?
Exactly. I think he graduated early or went to grad school and still played an additional
went to Stanford
year.
with he majored in architectural something.
That's true. Engineering, I believe it was.
Yeah, something like that. Graduated early.
Yep.
His dad is the athletic director for West Virginia.
Yeah, I remember his dad was involved in sports as well.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
the one thing you do have to be concerned about is any school that uses a Christmas tree as a mascot.
Yeah, what is that? I never. That is a Christmas tree, isn't it, or something? I don't know what that is.
It's a pine tree.
Pine tree. Okay,
it's a Christmas tree.
Yeah. It is on the commercials on ESPN. It looks like a Christmas tree to me too. Anyhow, Colts and Texans. That game getting underway in about an hour. Meanwhile, on Sunday, the Steelers face the Cleveland Browns again. And Mr. Hoyer,
wow.
And, all I can say about that is they're in for sort of a rude awakening. I hope not, but based on the performance, Chad, that you saw against Jacksonville, what do they need to improve this week, for heaven's sake?
The whole entire team. I don't know what else. I mean, they looked bad offensively. Okay, somebody's going to come out here and say they look good defensively. Well, Penn State looked good running the ball against UMass. I mean, it's the same comparison.
Right.
So throw that out the window. They're still not a very good defensive team.
Yeah.
And Tomlin, honest to goodness, is not having a good year as even a head coach. That team is heavily penalized. I think they might be the second most penalized team in the league, if not the most.
Yeah.
But that's on the head coach. That's a lack of discipline, and that's on him. I think this is going to be a blowout because Cleveland's going to think that, hey, we should have had that first game, and if we're going to compete for a division, we have to win our divisional games at home. And this is a huge statement game for the Cleveland Browns coming up, and I think that they handle the Steelers fairly easily.
Mm-hmm. Dave, do you think maybe Cleveland now, second time around, they've had a chance to, of course, they look good in the second half of that last game. Do you think they'll have the momentum going into Sunday?
That and exactly everything that Chad was saying about the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers seem to be in complete disarray. I hate to say this because I have admired the man for so long, but I think Dick LeBeau has seen the game start to pass him by.
Yeah.
I hate to use that phrase or anything about it. He's a great man. I know his players love him, but it seems as though he's not getting the right kind of defensive setups against the teams they're playing. And I think that the Browns have that confidence in the second half of the opening weekend. And I got to agree with Chad. I think that's going to be a blowout on the Browns side this week.
Yeah. Jimmy, do you see any bright stars on behalf of the Steelers this week, a bright spot that you can probably address?
No penalties. Just look what happened last week. The Steelers were driving. Roethlisberger throws the ball to Lance Moore.
Mm-hmm.
He catches it for, I think it was a 25-yard catch or so. He spikes the ball, goes celebrating, and they had the punt.
Yeah, those are stupid mistakes.
I don't know if anybody remember that. So the penalties are hurting Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Going back to what Dave said about the defense, and Dick LeBeau, if you look at their defensive players, Paul Amalu is up there in age. They signed Harrison, who's a workout fiend. He's up there in age. Kiesel's up there in age.
Yeah.
The other defenders they have, Jason Rurals, Lawrence Timmons, they're all young and they're still trying to learn the NFL game. And these other teams are passing them by with their new offensive schemes. And so I totally see the Browns coming in and beating Pittsburgh easily.
Well, let me get a score from you. What do you think the final score will be in this game on Sunday, Jimmy?
Well, with Cleveland's momentum they had against Tennessee last week, just coming back from the largest deficit in the history of a road team, I say that Cleveland's going to win 24, Pittsburgh 17.
Okay, 24-17. What do you say, Dave?
28-14 Browns.
And what do you say, Chad? Is Chad still with us there?
Uh-oh.
Okay.
I'm here, 28-10 Browns.
There he is. Okay, what was that again?
28-10 Browns.
28-10 Browns. Okay, that's what we got from the guys on Thursday Night Sports Talk. We got Dave Shannon, Chad States, also Jimmy Ty, and yours truly, Greg Banks. We'll talk about Penn State, Pitt, and also some hockey getting underway in Pittsburgh tonight. That all coming up next on Thursday Night Sports Talk.
All right. Can everybody take their seats and settle down, please? Hey, come on, guys. We got a lot of work to get through today, okay? Now, let's start with some word problems. Okay, let's see. This question is for Jacob. Jacob, let's say you work 25 hours a week after school at the deli, earning $8 an hour. Sally works 30 hours a week at the movie theater, earning Y dollars an hour. And Sean works 40 hours a week at the auto shop, earning X dollars an hour. Then how are you going to drive your mother to her dialysis treatments every day and still find time to finish your science project this week?
Some students are tackling more than just their schoolwork, which is why more than 30% of them aren't graduating. But you can give them the boost they need to make it through by visiting boostup.org.
All right, listen up, class. This next question is for Susan. If you pick 27 apples and you give away 30%, how many apples will you...
Visit boostup.org today. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
Today, my new dad threw a barbecue.
Today, my new son and I threw a barbecue.
There were burgers and chicken.
I burnt everything. The burgers, the chicken, the salad.
They were delicious.
They were awful.
And then we had watermelon.
I'm allergic to watermelon.
And then we played catch.
I broke Mr. Lewis's window, Mrs. Wakeham's window, Mrs. Wakeham's windshield. And then, somehow, my hand. My hand!
And then my dad even let me drive his car.
The hospital's on the right! It was a rough day.
It was a great day.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are. For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and...
It's Thursday Night Sports Talk on the airnetwork.net. Greg Banks in the studio, Dave Shannon in Altoona, Chad States in Huntingdon, and Jimmy Ty in Johnstown. Always glad to have you along. By the way, I failed to mention, if you ever like to reach out to us and hit us up on Skype, you can make a Skype request to Skype at Greg Banks 3. That's our username. Greg Banks 3, you can use that address if you'd like to make a request, and we can get back to you on that. Also, you can email us at greg@theairnetwork.net. That's greg@theairnetwork.net. We're on the air on Thursdays from 7 until 8, Thursday Night Sports Talk. And then, of course, we're on our website, too. I guess you guys already noticed that, right? We put the shows up there so you can listen kind of on demand at any given time, Friday, throughout the week. Anyhow, let's get on with what's happening in college football. Coming up this Saturday, Penn State had a bye week, and now they're moving on to the Big House to take on Michigan, where James Franklin says, we're not worried about Michigan. We got to worry about ourselves, basically. What do you say to that, Dave?
And that's a good call on his part. It's going to be, this is a big tell for him as to, and we talked about this a bit last week, that he learned at Vanderbilt a way to handle bye weeks and to get the most out of them, as he ended up going 3-1 in bye weeks. He's lucky he has Michigan, I think, and I never thought I'd be saying that, but at this particular point this season, it's a good thing he has Michigan out of his bye week. And guess what? He has another bye week next week. So it's it's going to be interesting to see how he paces his team. This all gets back to, and we've talked about this at length, and then we had a little bit of a discussion there about how the sanctions have hurt that team. In a way, I think they have a lot of offensive stars that are there on that team, but one of the things that you don't get the draft, when you're paying attention to offensive stars, which is kind of what went on, and to Bill O'Brien's credit, he was able to get some outstanding young offensive players in, but they didn't do much about the offensive line, and they're paying the price in any number of ways, whether you want to look at the rushing game, and Chad, I think, will be saying it, but it was Massachusetts for the rest of the season when people look back and say, they had 100-yard ground gainers. And it was like, yeah, but it was Massachusetts. Big test for them to see how that offensive line is able to do a combination there, too. I mean, Hackenberg needs a little bit of protection, too. He reminds you of Roethlisberger, maybe a little too much, because he tends to be he's a little more daring than what Ben is now, but he tends to look a little slow on his feet from time to time when the pocket's collapsing around him. So that's the one thing that they really need to work on offensively. Defensively, they really have to be up to the challenge of teams that decide to go into a hurry-up kind of offense. They seem to be in a lot of trouble when that happens. And that's a big key, too, is having maybe that's a little bit about personnel, too. Do you have the right personnel on the field when the team decides to go into a hurry-up? So those are the issues that Penn State has to tackle this week, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think, though, they come away with a win. It's a good thing they're playing Michigan.
Yeah, hey, Chad, now Michigan comes in depleted to this game. They basically have nobody to speak of. Brady Hoke, of course, his job is questionable at best. It's on the line. How do you think this thing's going to pan out for the Nittany Lions?
It's going to be a close game, and it's only going to be close because, you got to look at Michigan and know that they've got 85 scholarship athletes on that team. And I know we've talked about this before, but honest to goodness, that matters. And it really does. Coaching aside, and even the way that Michigan is struggling, they still have a lot of scholarship athletes that are better than what Penn State's are.
Right.
So, I look for it to be a very close ball game. I think Michigan's defense has the ability to be able to give Penn State fits because Penn State's offensive line is horrible. But, and this is a big but, this is going to rely on Penn State's front seven. If that defensive line from Penn State can play at the level they're capable or more and just shut Michigan down, which they are completely capable of doing, Penn State's going to walk away with a win. But I really don't think it's going to be something major. I'm thinking like a 13-10 ball game type deal here for Penn State.
Well, this game doesn't leave a lot for the imagination. It doesn't have the luster that it had, many years ago. Let's face it, going into the big house ain't like going into grandma's house. Yeah, or like the horseshoe, or some other vaulted venue. But Jimmy, how do you see this game playing out between Michigan and also Penn State?
I say that Michigan's not that good of a team this year. They're in disarray. The quarterback got injured. The students rallied. It's a mess up there. But Penn State's coming through on a bye week. They're rested. Like Chad said, it's going to be a close game. I'm going to say like 17-10 Penn State.
All right, Dave.
Oh, wow, did you steal that right out of my mouth, Jimmy? That was where I was headed, 17-10.
Yeah. Hey, we were talking what could be the best-case scenario now that Penn State could at least go and get a bowl bid, this year, even getting to the Big Ten championship. But you know what? I looked at the conference, the way it's set up, and Penn State would have to actually get by Michigan State. That's a whole different story there. They're in that's at the end of the season. They're in the same state, but they ain't the same team we're talking about here, guys. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. It's actually it's kind of nice to see Michigan State take on that kind of prominence as a football, because we know of their prowess when it comes to basketball.
Yeah.
But it's great to see their football program really coming on. And to be honest with you, hats off to Northwestern too. I think their football program has done leaps and bounds too.
Yeah. Did any of you guys watch the Mississippi State game over the weekend? Did you watch college? I thought that was college football at its best. What do you think of that? And watching any of those games, Jimmy, what do you think?
It was upset week last week.
Yeah.
Alabama lost, Oregon lost. It was upset week. The team that surprised me this year is Ole Miss. The way they came out and the way they played against a powerful team such as Alabama.
Right.
Ole Miss is the real deal in the SEC, and that was just a great game just to watch. I'm an Ole Miss fan now. Let's say that.
Well, let's face it. These guys primarily are recruiting in the same area. They get Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. So when you watch this thing come down to the Final Four this year, remember this is going to be the first year of the Final Four. How do you think that plays out, Dave? Because the SEC seems to be so dominant. And then you've got Florida State, who is ranked number 1 in the ACC. What's the compilation at the end of the season? A couple of SEC teams and Florida State? I mean, how do you see that panning out?
I don't know. I think you've sized it up pretty good. I think those are the conferences that are going to be there for the championship. Here's a question. The bigger question is, what's this mean going forward for college football? And to be honest, I mean, these things kind of make a cycle too. How many years had the Big Ten been dominant in football? And we're always a part of the mix. And, at least two of the teams out of the Big Ten would be in the mix when it came to a national championship.
Right.
But that's all shifted south. And the question is it going to stay that way, or are we going to see a revival in northern football to get it back to the point where it's going to be competitive and competing for a national championship at some point?
Right, Chad, in light of the new BCS bowl games coming up at the end of the season, how do you see that playing out? Where are some of the teams that you're looking at seeing as a Final Four, if you will?
The SEC is probably going to get two teams out of this. To me, and I'm not going to agree with that, only because I think the Final Four needs to be comprised of conference champions. Take everything aside. I still think the SEC gets two in, but I'm not in agreement with that. I think the Pac-12 is going to get a team in, whether that ends up UCLA coming back or Oregon or whoever. The Big 12 is going to get somebody in. I think that's going to be Oklahoma. The thing about the Final Four is one loss now doesn't kill you. Before, when you had to be undefeated to make that Final Two and a jockeying for position, well, now one loss doesn't necessarily knock you out of the race. So, you still got the entire field at play now. Oregon lost, yes, but if they come back and they win the Big 12, they're fine. So it's going to be very interesting, and this is going to be a year like none of us have really ever seen because of the 14 format.
I'm not certain that I'm really comfortable with this committee makeup of these people who are involved in this committee. I heard you groan, Jimmy. What's your thoughts on having a committee that now decides who gets into these bowl games at the end of the season, into the playoff?
All the SEC teams, if you look at the committee, Archie Manning is on the committee. He's an SEC guy,
right?
And you have all these little friends on the committee. It's going to be two SEC teams. It's going to be Auburn and either Alabama or Ole Miss, whoever wins that conference championship.
Okay.
Then it's going to be a UCLA,
Florida State.
Okay.
And
Florida State.
Yeah.
And you look at a team like Penn State and Michigan State. Yes, the Big Ten is a weak conference this year.
Yes, it is.
Okay, it's a weak conference. So what happens if Penn State rolls the dice, they win the rest of their games, they beat Michigan State, then they go into the Big Ten championship game,
right?
And they beat whoever let's say they play Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game, and they beat Northwestern. Penn State should have a chance to be there, but Penn State's not going to be there because this committee is this. Format is just based on SEC teams.
Well, but you also have people like Condoleezza Rice on this committee. Of course, obviously, she's a Stanford grad, I believe.
Yeah.
Also worked for Stanford. But
it doesn't work for teams up in the Big Ten.
Oh, you're not going to see it.
And it doesn't work for any team in the ACC. What happens if Florida State loses?
Right.
And Clemson comes back? Do you think they're going to put Clemson?
No.
In the Final Four? No, this is a money-making machine to put the four best football schools: Oklahoma, Alabama, Auburn, and
Florida State.
Florida State in this every single year, unless these teams go undefeated. And last week proved a team like Ole Miss shocked the world, saying, "You know what? Just because Alabama, we can play like the big boys now." Do you think they're going to put an Ole Miss in this? No, because it's not going to make money for them.
Hey,
it's not going to make money for the sponsors.
It's Thursday Night Sports Talk. Let's face it, guys. It's just like Thursday Night Football. And I wanted to mention this before and get your feelings on this. Thursday Night Football. I mean, these are not the best matchups when you think about Thursday night. The other thing that kills me on this Thursday night thing, quite frankly, is I'm playing on Sunday. I'm beat up. I got no time to recover. Do you think this is an issue, by the way, Chad, that the unions should probably, I know they'll never go back. It's like a tax that you get. They enact a tax. Nobody ever takes them back. We're still paying a liquor tax from 1939. It's called the Johnstown Flood Tax, and it continues to this day. Johnstown could use the money, by the way, but it goes to the state. Having said that, do you think that maybe they got to reevaluate Thursday night football, and maybe we'll even take a look at this BCS playoff at some given time?
Yeah, I think they need to look at Thursday night football. They're not going to. I mean, let's face it. If it can make a buck, the NFL is going to do it.
Yeah.
They're a $9 billion a year revenue machine, and if they can make a buck and they can figure out how to do it, I can't believe the NFLPA agreed to it to begin with.
No, I don't either.
For what you're saying, Greg, that's tough to recover from Sunday to Thursday. It's also tough for those coaches to game plan Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And let's face it, if one of them has to travel across country, now you're going to take another half a day or a day out of that. So you're really kind of going into a Thursday night game, depending on your situation, maybe unprepared, and that's not really fair.
No, it's not.
So, I cannot believe the NFL or the NFLPA agreed to that to begin with. As far as the 14 playoff goes, this is something that has been clamored about for years.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't like the BCS. We definitely didn't like the two-poll system. So how do you figure it out? Because let's face it, they're not going to go to a 16-team playoff like Division III does.
Exactly.
Or,
and
when we were talking about, we don't like how we got Condoleezza Rice on this, forum to be able to, or this committee to be able to decide teams.
Right.
Well, guess what happens at the regional level for Division II? And I don't know whether you guys know this or not, but it used to be the case. There is, to be able to get into the Division II playoffs, you have to qualify for your region. Do you know how you qualify for your region? Through votes, through athletic directors or sports information directors.
Okay.
So it's completely political.
People closer to the game.
Even at the next level down, you have issues. So, college football just continually shoots itself in the foot.
Yeah, it does. But see, and if you remember why the NCAA said, we can't do that, because they'd have to take off too much class time in order to do these games if you had 16 teams.
That's
why
BS.
Why does that work in Division II and it can't work in Division I?
Well, and the playoffs happen at the end in December, for Pete's sake.
Yeah.
Who's going to class then? Most schools are done with their fall semester first, maximum second week of December.
Right, and it's somewhere right after Thanksgiving. Those kids don't even see a campus, probably for a month. So I could never really buy into that theory that, they're going to lose all this class time. Hey, who's missing class time? The NCAA basketball tournament seems to be doing well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
So,
and let's look at Division III. Division III does it, and those schools are all academic-based.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
Yeah. So when I look at this whole debacle as the playoff system unveils itself, and then I look at the NFL Thursday night, then I look at the NBA and see that they're signing a fat contract with television here for billions of dollars, which mean the players are going to get paid well. Somebody's not doing their job, and I got to admit, if I'm a member of a union, I'm raising some hell with somebody. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, that money. At some point, the networks, if they continue to have crappy Thursday night games, eventually that part of the equation is going to go away, because who wants to watch that every week?
Well, let me see a show of hands. How many of you will really, truly watch the game tonight between Houston and the Colts? Seriously, watch the entire game.
No.
It's going to be on CBS.
Penguins.
Okay, because Penguins are on, right? I mean,
Penguins are on. I'm going to watch the Penguins.
Yeah, here again, we know that on Thursday night, these aren't the greatest matchups. And I'm going to be quite honest with you. After Thanksgiving, remember when the NFL Network was showing these games? I never got the games. It's like Major League Baseball. They were all over the road on these series.
Oh, my goodness.
I didn't know if they were on Fox 1 one night, MLB. I don't have all those channels, so you can see where these packages with television will be going soon. It will be pay-per-view, because if you have to have cable, you got to pay for it. It won't be on network television any longer.
And I'll tell you what, with the kind of contracts they have at this point, there aren't going to be a lot of viewers for that either. Right. I mean, I know a lot of folks don't go to some professional games. I would love to go to a Penguin game.
Right.
But it's like I'd have to mortgage my house,
yeah, exactly.
you know, to get tickets for the damn game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
You know, so I'm not going to throw down, although, you know, I just got a new TV back at the beginning of the year, and it is amazing. It's actually like being there. But that being said, there's still something about being at the game, and I'd love to do that, but I can't afford it. I'm certainly not going to throw you, you know, maybe 25, 30% of what it would cost to physically be in the stadium just to watch it on my TV.
I agree.
It's the atmosphere, Greg.
Yeah, it is the atmosphere.
Like, I would go to the Penguins game for the atmosphere.
Well, just like we mentioned a couple weeks ago.
Why would I want to go to a Penn game whenever I can, like Dave said, I can watch it on my television.
Right.
You know, get a drink for free.
Go to the bathroom.
For free. Yep. Go to the bathroom for free. Not worrying about being dirtied in the bathroom.
Yes.
Get nachos.
Get
nachos for about $1.
Yeah, but you can get them here for free at home. So
hey,
or they charge an arm and a leg.
Hey, honey, could you get me another beer? Well, see, you know, it'd probably be cheaper for me to get a girlfriend than go to one of those games. I'm telling you.
Honey, let me tell you what, guys. If I say, honey, get me a beer, I might as well have went to that game.
I hear you.
It's going to be cheaper for me to do that.
You better be sleeping
that will cost me in the long run.
You better be sleeping with one eye open. But anyhow, I think I'm going to get one of those dogs, you know, St. Bernard. Hey, buddy, go get me another beer, would you? All right, listen, I forgot to mention Pitt. They got beat by Virginia last week. We won't go over that as nauseum because we know that they're having a problem. But they have a bye week, and that's good news, before they take on Virginia Tech next Saturday. So without
it's a Thursday night game.
Is that a Thursday night game? Oh,
yeah.
my. So now how many folks will be watching that? You know, there again is another instance that the NCAA, I think they play games on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights for high school, right? So play?
No, they're doing Friday games.
Oh, my God.
College games Friday.
Yeah, that kills me. So there again, Pitt getting set to take on Virginia Tech, as Dave said, next Thursday. Speaking of which, what do you guys think, real quick, about television and high school sports now? We're seeing some of these high school football teams, some of the elite teams, like from down in Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and California, playing on Thursday night or some given night on ESPN 1, 2, or 3. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't like it. I really don't. I think, and we've talked a little bit about the pampered athlete syndrome and what it's led to with some of these guys. And I don't want to damn I don't want to categorize or pigeonhole anybody in the NFL or any athlete in particular. But there are some young men that don't know how to handle what they the wonderful opportunity they have been given to both earn money and get notoriety.
Right.
And they just don't know how to handle it because they stopped growing emotionally at about the age of 13 when it became evident that they were such an important athlete at a school.
Yeah.
And I think that when you start to do national TV for high school games, regular season games, now I think it's okay.
Oh, for all-star games and stuff like that.
Or even maybe a championship game in like a Texas state championship game. Yeah, I could see that. Some of the hotbeds. Maybe even a PIAA championship game, something like that.
Yeah.
But a regular season game on national television, no, I just don't buy it. I'm sorry.
Jimmy and I, and also Dave, and you probably remember, Chad, when we did the Huntingdon game against Tyrone many years ago on PCN. See, I don't mind it being on television, local TV, but when it gets into this national thing, do any of you remember probably 20, 30 years ago when you couldn't even interview a kid after a game? You had to talk to the coach.
Right.
You don't dare put a kid on TV. Well, it seems like nowadays all bets are off. We're putting these kids on TV ad nauseum now and making them these stars. And I read in the paper the other day that this highly recruited kid from, I forget where it was, committed suicide. And because he was overwhelmed, he didn't feel like he could say no to anybody. So he just ended his life. And how many stories have we heard recently in the last 3 weeks? Kids dying on the field.
Yeah, it's. I think that I don't agree with the national telecasts, regular season games at all.
And have you followed that story out of Sayreville, New Jersey? It's incredible, the stories coming out of New Jersey now. They shut down the football program because of hazing.
Mm-hmm.
And the hazing was, and you can go to NJ.com, by the way, to get this story. They're following it every day. It's even big news in New York City. They shut down the program last Thursday because these kids who were seniors were harassing the freshmen. And it's on, matter of fact, somebody is going to go to jail because it was sexual abuse, and apparently it had been going on for years in the field house.
Look what happened down in Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was like last year. Two football players, prominent captains on their team.
Right.
They were the whole team. Go to a party, sexually abused. I believe this is the story. They sexually abused. I think it was
girl.
like a sophomore.
Yeah,
a sophomore girl.
Yep.
And they had to go to court and all this. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Story?
I remember. Yeah, and the kid went to jail for a
Yeah.
year, and then now he's playing for the team. So
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my frustration is just simply this, now that we have sort of a platform to talk about it, that I think we're putting these kids, I think what we're doing is setting them up to fail in many instances.
Hey, you don't get the right to vote until you're, 18.
21 now. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't drink until you're 21. And there's, I think there were good reasons behind that.
Right.
Because quite frankly, in either case, voting, and there's people I know that are in their 30s and 40s and 50s
And don't do
that
it,
I
yeah.
don't know that are quite ready to vote yet.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think that you can't expect that. It's not what happens. The way you grow up is a little bit slower than what we're trying to make happen for these kids. And boy, I fully understand it. And hearing that thing about I did not hear about the high school player that committed suicide.
Yeah.
But there can't be any bigger display as to why it's wrong.
Yeah. So
Here's
anyhow,
a story for you.
go ahead, Chad.
When you watch these games on TV, what do you see going across the bottom of the screen? You guys ever pay attention to that?
No, what is it?
Number 8 recruit going to Oklahoma, wide receiver, blah, blah,
Yeah.
playing in this game. Number 1 quarterback playing in this game.
Mhm.
It's all about exposure. So why is ESPN doing that?
Yeah.
To me, it's a pretty simple thing.
Yeah.
It's about exposing these kids so they can show that they follow these kids around. So now, hey, we're going to go show this college game because remember this kid from high school?
Yeah.
He was a super recruit. It's all about money.
It's money, too. Yeah, you got to remember Nike and all the other shoe companies have money in these
Under
high school
Armour.
games. And Under Armour. And
Under Armour's got to play in this. You're going to see these guys in these Under Armour and, Nike or whatever All-Star games later on. But you guys, every single one of you, and I just kind of sat back and listened, but every single one of you hit it correctly.
Yeah. I think we're just raising these
can't
kids.
handle it.
Yeah.
It's too much for a kid to handle at a young age.
And the parents have to be
There's a
somewhat
kid.
responsible.
Oh, sorry, Chad.
No, I was just going to say, Jimmy, some of the times the parents have to be responsible, too, to say no. You know what I'm saying? This is my kid. I choose to raise him a certain way. But, when everybody wants to get their hooks into this kid and he fails, because you know what? Let's face it. If you're a running back, let's say Tyrone, and you're the big guy on campus, you go to Penn State, you might not ever be seen.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
and these kids now don't know how to fail.
No.
And it hurts them.
Yeah.
I saw a story online the other day where it was a basketball recruit signed with, I think it was Oregon. And Oregon was a Nike. They had the Nike contract.
Yeah, because what's his name
signed-
lives out
signed
there.
He signed with Oregon, and then he decides, well, I don't want to play for Oregon because they have Nike. I'm going to go somewhere where they have I think it was
Notre Dame, I
Adidas?
think it was, or somewhere.
I
Yeah.
think it was like Adidas or something.
Yep.
And so I'm going to decommit from Oregon.
Yeah.
So I can go and play with a school that represents Adidas.
Well, if we want to get
and
real,
there's like a high school kid doing this.
yeah. If we
It's
want to get,
like LeBron James.
if we
LeBron
want to, LeBron James kid. He's out shooting some jumpers the other day and hitting them, and now people are talking about recruiting him. What is he? All of 9 or 13 or something?
Yeah.
So I guess okay. Hey, let's get on to one more thing before we wrap it up tonight on Thursday Night Sports Talk here on the AirNetwork.net.
Hey, shoots and scores!
That's what I'm talking about. It's Penguin season.
I love it, Dave.
Yep. And the game is on tonight as the Pens take on the Ducks. How's that turning out, Dave? Because I know you're watching it.
Outstanding. 3-1 Pens at the end of one. Marc-Andre Fleury has had an outstanding first period. He did let one get by, but he has made some postseason kind of saves. during the regular season. Let's hope he keeps that going the whole way through the postseason. But I'll tell you what, Crosby and Hornquist, almost Crosby has a goal, Hornquist has a goal, and Pascal Dupuis.
Yeah.
And Hornquist is out there with the Crosby line. Oh, my goodness.
God,
they had another opportunity between the two of them. And I loved Hornquist in the preseason. He was one of my highlights in watching the preseason games that I did. A different Penguins look. We had talked about this, and one of the things that the new coach took out is that stretch pass.
No stretch passing under Coach Johnston's agenda. That's what he says. Hold on to the puck, man.
Yeah, and he said if we have to turn and go back into our own zone, so be it. You know, we're not going to get into that. And he makes a good point because you end up with, and it really comes back to haunt you then in the postseason, you get so many turnovers in the neutral zone. And that's the way they played this game. I think I saw one stretch pass, and it did get knocked down just about at the, the opposition zone right at the blue line. And so it's like, geez whiz, the guy makes a good point. It makes for exciting hockey when you hit the stretch pass. Oh, my goodness, how many breakaways do you get that way?
Yeah, exactly.
But by the same token, that's live by the stretch pass, die by the stretch pass sometimes.
Well, I saw where they signed Hornquist for 4 years at $17 million. So, I mean, he must be somebody they're going to utilize quite a bit. Exactly.
He's special. Yeah, exactly. I really like his looks.
And it's good to see Dupuis back after that injury last season as well. So if we can get Malkin, Dupuis, and you got Hornquist, Crosby, and
Malkin,
it's going to be a hell of a season.
Ole Mata is on the screen right now. Yeah. Ole is back. I'll tell you what a great young player last year. One of those training camp stories, and things just sifted out the right way so that Ollie could be a part of the team. And boy, sometimes you wonder about divine intervention.
Exactly.
And it's like, would he have played the whole season at Scranton Wilkes-Barre had things not worked out the way they did? Thank God he was in the NHL and playing for the Pens full time, because the kid deserves it. And he just shows. It's amazing to me, as young as he is, that he shows no problem shouldering that responsibility.
Well,
Second period about to start.
It is a long, long season, Dave, and settle down. We'll be talking more about the Pittsburgh Penguins every week here on Thursday Night Sports Talk. And I got to say, I'm kind of delighted that the Kings got beat last night as they unfurled their new banner. So, it's going to be a good season to watch the Penguins. So you want to join us as we talk about it every Thursday night from 7 to 8 on Thursday Night Sports Talk. Dave Shannon, Chad States, Jimmy Ty. Hey, thank you guys. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Okay, looking forward to seeing you again on Thursday night, as always, here on Thursday Night Sports on the airnetwork.net. Thanks for listening.